guys, it's Nicole. Welcome back to another video. Today is the final video in my Unhaul series. This is part 6 of the Unhaul. So I have 5 other videos where I go through each of the books I'm getting rid of and I talk a little bit about them. So today is the last part. It's been a little while since I filmed part 5. For a very long time, all the books were sitting on my couch, but I really needed my couch back. So the remainder of the books have been moved and they've been in this box here. So this video is going to work a little bit backwards in comparison to the other ones. I'm going to be pulling these books out of the box, talking you through them, and then popping them on the couch so that we can get that aesthetic viewing that I've been trying to do at the start of each video of the books piled on the couch. First book I have here is The Luckiest Girl Alive. This is a thriller. That's all I know. I haven't read it. I know there's now a Netflix adaptation. I was very intrigued by this when it first came out, and I think I found it when it was still a fairly new release in a charity shop, so I just grabbed it because it's so exciting when you find a relatively new release in a charity shop for really cheap. But I've learned with mystery thrillers, I don't like owning them because I never reread them. There might be like one exception, but majority have the same rule where I don't like to reread them, but I also really enjoy consuming them on audio. So I just don't think I want to own this because I don't even know if I'm going to read it first of all, but if I do read it, I will probably end up picking up the audiobook for it. Okay, this book is called From What I Remember. I loved this so much when I read it. I think I read it at a very relevant time in my life. I read this towards the end of high school, and the story follows a bunch of teenagers who end up in Mexico over a weekend, and they get very drunk, and the girl wakes up and she's married to this guy that she knows from school but doesn't know very well. So a lot of this book is just about the consequences of that one night, and I read this at a time where like going out was a new thing for me and it was like new and exciting. This was just such a fun book to read, and at a very relevant time. I know I gave this to my best friend, she read it, she loved it as well. I don't think I could ever read this again. Like, it's not my kind of book now, but I appreciate it so much for when I read it, basically. I have here a bunch of Tim Winton books that I have not read. I haven't read any of these. He's an Australian author who, for a long time, I was interested in reading his book. That interest has definitely dwindled over the years. I just know he writes contemporary fictional, I think family saga drama stories set in Australia. I think a lot of them are set in like outback Australia or small rural towns in Australia, and just sort of the conflict in those settings with the family and the community. That's what I think they are. He has so many books. He's one of those authors whose books you always come across in charity shops. So all of these I did get in charity shops. I just am very rarely these days interested in picking up this kind of book. They take up a lot of space on my shelves, and it's like, why do I own 3 books by one author I've never read from before, who I have no idea if I will like his books? I think the one I was most interested in is Cloud Street. I have here another book that BookTube convinced me to buy a long time ago, and that is The Wrath and the Dawn by Renee Adair. This inside is so beautiful. I've always loved it. This story is a loose retelling of Scheherazade. I loved the idea of the main character. She's someone seeking revenge for her friend who was married off to a king and then executed by the king the next morning. Basically, this keeps happening. The king keeps getting married, and these executions of these wives happen very shortly after the marriage. So she sets herself up that she is the next to get married to him, and then potentially the next to be executed, but plans before her execution to get revenge on him and kill him. This is one of those stories where the main character, main female character, is very like headstrong and determined, but then as soon as she meets the love interest, a lot of her objectives and a lot of her personality is like lost, which really frustrated me, and that's like basically all I remember about this. I never read the sequel, but I will tell you I did really like the writing, so I am tempted to give this author another go in future. I have The Devil Wears Prada. Love the movie, still love the movie, wanted to read the book, Found it in a charity shop, thought it was meant to be, but I'd never read it, so it wasn't. And now we're saying goodbye. I have a couple of Taylor Jenkins Reid books that I'm getting rid of. I have Maybe in Another Life. It's one of those stories like the movie Sliding Doors, but I was very disappointed by the execution. It just felt like a very lukewarm story. This one I honestly do not remember. I was just looking at the blurb and I'm like, did I even read this? Well, I did, because I've got all these annotations sitting here. Okay, apparently I really enjoyed some of the discussions in here about being single, but according to the blurb on the back, it's about a couple that fall out of love. I'm pretty sure this is yet again a book that BookTube convinced me to buy, and this is Since You've Been Gone by Morgan Matson. I think I enjoyed this. I loved how for a contemporary novel it was very focused on platonic relationships. I got The Paladin Prophecy. This is by Mark Frost. Tagline is Run for Your Life. I don't remember what that is about. I did start reading this. I've still got the bookmark. I got 100 pages in and I didn't continue. Okay, it's a mystery thriller. That's also a YA novel. I can't tell you anything else about it. That's it. I'm also getting rid of my copy of Laini Taylor's Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy. This is a trilogy. If I had the space, I would keep it. Like, these were potential keepers because I did enjoy them. I don't think it's an all-time favorite, but Laini Taylor's writing is so distinct and beautiful that I could potentially see myself in future wanting to sit down and just reread parts of this to revisit her writing, not necessarily for the story. There were some characters in here I really liked. I feel like the side characters really stood out way more than the main characters. The main couple, I kind of found boring. Also, I have to be honest, these covers, is that the best you can do? Really? Little Brown? The little pile is coming along. Something in the back of this book. Oh, it's my plane ticket. It's when I flew into Brisbane. When was this? 2016. Okay. So I took this with me on a trip, but I never read it. This story follows a young Hawaiian girl who starts developing spots on her body, which indicates that she has leprosy. She is then sent to a quarantine sort of setup environment. To be honest, the content of this book and reading more books about the history of Hawaii does interest me, but I would rather start off by reading books that are told by natives instead of people who have moved to Hawaii and lived there for a chunk of their life. And I feel like if I was to read this, it would be again on audio. I do like listening to historical fiction novels on audio. Next I have here the what's it called? Maradaya? Yeah, Maradaya trilogy. I read all 3 books in this series, and this is one of those series I kept reading and kept trying to convince myself that I liked, but I never liked. I don't know, I got what this book was trying to do, like the dark fantasy romance thing, but it didn't work for me. Next, I am unhauling Serafina by Rachel Hartman. This is a fantasy book where dragons can also transform into humans, so it's like werewolves, but they're dragons. Really didn't like the writing in this one. I found it confusing. Like, I just didn't know what was happening in the story because I found the writing hard to follow. Oh, this book, Eleanor and Park. I should have gotten rid of this so long ago. This I just do not like. I think it's boring. Like, the writing is boring. The characters are boring. Next, I have some books by Mallory Blackman that I'm getting rid of. I did go back and forth whether to get rid of this series. I read the first book only and I got the box set but just never finished the series. The first book is called Noughts and Crosses, and in this world, people who are noughts, I think, are black, and people who are crosses are white. Is that right? No, people who are noughts are white and people who are crosses are black. And we follow 2 star-crossed lovers, one from the noughts, one from the crosses, falling in love and the conflict. It's very like Romeo and Juliet-esque, kind of story. The way this book ended and like what this book did, I felt like satisfied. Like I didn't feel like I needed to read more, which is why I never have. And then I also picked up this book in a charity shop by the same author, and this is The Stuff of Nightmares, but I just don't think I'm super interested in this. It's got a stalker and it sounds like it's some sort of horror thriller kind of story. Again, debatable. Like I could potentially read this, but I don't feel the need to own it. I have two romance, I think they're YA romances by Jennifer E. Smith. The first one is The Statistical Probability of Love at First Sight. You guys have no idea how many times that took for me to say this. Why do you make your title so long and complicated, Miss Smith? Really, why? This is about like two strangers who like fall in love while they're on the airplane. Like they are both riding or traveling solo and they have their seats next to each other and they get to know each other on their flight and kind of fall in love. That's kind of what that one's about. And then this one, This Is What Happy Looks Like, is a romance between, I think it's a regular girl and a celebrity. I don't know, these were just fun. I read them like over the summer when I was a teenager at one stage. Okay, I've then got Slumdog Millionaire. I have not read this. I loved the movie. I just had a whole bunch of dust come up with this book. Yeah, so I loved the movie of this, and so I always wanted to read the book, but I don't want to anymore. My mind has been changed. Apparently it was originally published as a Q&A, according to this front cover. Does that mean this novel was made after the movie was made? So it's really like an adaptation from the movie? Another modern Australian classic I kind of felt like I had to read for a really long time, so I purchased this book in a charity shop but have never read it, and I don't think I ever will, and that is Jasper Jones by Craig Silvey. This novel I think is quite similar to Kill a Mockingbird. I've heard it, yeah, it literally says it on the front. I'm not making it up. It says there, the Australian To Kill a Mockingbird. I haven't read To Kill a Mockingbird and I haven't read this book. Okay, I'm also getting rid of this witchy trilogy that I did really enjoy when I read it. I would say it's on the younger side of YA, and I read it like when I was an older teenager, but I still had a lot of fun with it. I think the first book is Hex Hall, and then we have Demon Glass and Spellbound. It's basically at a witchy academy boarding school setting, and we follow this young witch. And I cannot tell you anything beyond that because I do not remember a single thing, but I had a fun time. I'm getting rid of 3 of my V.E. Schwab books. I have here the Darker Shade of Magic, the exclusive collector's edition, and it is really pretty. It's got a lot of fan art inside the dust jacket. And then I also have the Archive and the Unbound. This was originally meant to be a series, but she didn't ever complete it. I actually really liked these, but I didn't really like this one as much. I find with most of her books, I love the idea, I'm obsessed with the concept, but the execution and the characters has never quite met expectations for me. This series I really liked. I have seen recent like reviews of it that makes me think I might not like it as much if I read it for the first time now, but I'm also not super interested in reading it again or anytime soon since it's not completed. But I'm definitely biased when it comes to books about ghosts. I just love anything to do with ghosts, and these are like ghost stories, which I love. So maybe she'll write something about ghosts again in the future and I'll be interested in picking up what she writes. But yeah, I've gotten rid of these. I've kept Vicious and I've kept Vengeful. I'm also unhauling Snow Like Ashes. It's set in a world where there are different seasons, so like each kingdom is a different season, which I really enjoyed the setting, and the magic of the people was also related to each season. I was reading this around the same time when I was reading the Fallen Kingdom series, and I was looking for something to fill the void of the Fallen Kingdom series when I'd like caught up with it, but this just like didn't really live up to it, so I was disappointed. I never continued. Okay, they're all out of order, but I have a whole bunch of books here by L.J. Smith, who wrote The Vampire Diaries and The Secret Circle. I have some books from each series here. I think when it comes to The Vampire Diaries, I only read The Awakening and The Struggle. These were so different to the TV shows. I was really shocked. I loved the TV shows, that's why I picked these up, but I did not like these books. They're very dated. However, I will say The Secret Circle, I loved The Secret Circle. The biggest tragedy of teenage Nicole's life was the fact that The Secret Circle only got one season. If you watched it, oh my god, it was so good. It was the biggest loss. Like, it could have been the next big TV show. It was so good. We follow Cassie, whose family has always come from this small town, but she was raised outside of the small town. At the beginning of the story, she returns to the small town. Turns out that Cassie and her family, like I think her mum, they're a family of witches. They've always been witches, but the way the magic works in this world, this was my favorite thing, was the witches have a coven. So there are, I think, how many are there? 5 or 6 of them. I think there must have been 6, but their magic only works if all the witches in the coven are together. And I loved that, because before Cassie was not living in the town, the other witches didn't have their powers. Like, now that she comes back, they have their magic. It works something along those lines, and I thought it was so fun, and I loved the small town vibe. I loved all the characters. It was brilliant. I'm still so upset and so disappointed that we didn't get a season 2, especially with the cliffhanger season 1 ended on. I have thought in the past about doing like a video like reading these, but I feel like so many people do videos reading Vampire Diaries and such. I don't have the time. If I had the time, maybe. I'm also getting rid of my copy of An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. I was so bitter when I read this book. If you were around when this book first came out, there was so much marketing for it. This was back when I first started watching BookTube, and I was so convinced by so many books that you've probably seen quite a few now in this Unhaul. This one had me so excited because it was really marketed and sold as a standalone fantasy. If you read this book, the way this book ends, it is not a standalone. There is no way it's a standalone. And I was so bitter when I got to the end of this book that it's not a standalone. Like, it was just so obvious, and it was just so annoying that, like, I felt like I'd been lied to. I have this other fantasy book called Witch Sign by Den Patrick. This is just a fantasy book I felt quite underwhelmed by. Have The Bear and the Nightingale trilogy. I loved book 1 of The Bear and the Nightingale. The sequels I didn't love as much. What really frustrated me mostly about this series was it did a really good job of building up all these different villains. It just felt like there was all this build up and all this conflict, and then everything was resolved in like 2 pages. Not exactly 2 pages, I'm probably exaggerating there. It just felt like we built up all this for very little impact, and that really annoyed me. That's what a lot of this book did, or this book series did. I am kind of tempted to keep the first book because I did love the first book, but I should just get rid of all of them. We're trying to practice not being a hoarder. I have another play I haven't read. I think I was meant to read for school and I didn't read. Will never read. I don't read plays, not for pleasure, unless I'm forced to, and even then, very rarely do I actually go through with reading them. I did not like these books. These are 2 Alan Hopkins books that I have read both of them. It's Perfect and Impulse. I personally felt like they romanticized teenagers with mental illness. What did I say? I have notes. Let's go to my notes. Okay, apparently I said I felt like this is triggering. I think the problem with this is that these stories are entirely told in verse, so there's only so much these stories can say, but they're very focused on heavy topics. I'm also getting rid of all my books in the Angus Fong's and Perfect Snogging series. Oops. I absolutely adored this series when I was like 13-14 years old. I read them all, they were the best. And then I also do own, which I did not read, Wuthering Tight, which is a spin-off series that follows George's cousin. So George is like the main character in this series. I'm also getting rid of all these books by J. Kristoff. I have not read Aurora Rising, but I've read the rest of these. I'm kind of just a bit tired of his main characters because they are very much all the same. I did really like Nevernight when I read it, so I have kept that, but also that's like signed. But maybe I should just get rid of that. I don't know. I just think he's not quite the author for me anymore, so I'm just getting rid of his books for that reason. Oh no, not my battery dying. You're not allowed to die. Okay, we're gonna go rapid fire. My battery's gonna die, but I have Forgive Me, Leonard Peacock by Matthew Quick. I think it was okay. I think the narrative kind of threw me off. Then I also have this book called The Book of Shadow and Blood, One Girl, One Night, Centuries of Secrets. I really like this. This is a book I can remember I sat down and I literally read in one sitting one like evening in my childhood bedroom. I loved it, but I cannot tell you a single thing. I do not remember. She wakes up, this main girl, Nora, apparently, and she's covered in blood. Her boyfriend's dead, her friend's dead, and I just gotta like uncover the mystery of what happened because she can't remember. And I just found the whole story very, very intriguing, and there's a secret society sort of connection, and I think a cult, if I'm remembering correctly, or might just be secret society, but it was very, very intriguing, so much so that I did read it very quickly. The last lot of books I have here are the series by Patrick Ness called the Chaos Walking Trilogy, and I do have 2 copies of the second book, The Ask and the Answer. I brought the box set, I read that, and then I found this edition, which is a hardback that I really liked. So I bought that, even though I like don't love the trilogy a whole lot. I thought it was very fascinating. It was very well written. I love his book more than this. That's probably been my favorite read of his, so I've kept that one. But these ones I think I'm gonna unhaul. Well, I am unhauling. I'm not thinking about it, I've decided.
Hey, it is editing Nicole here. I've just gotten to like the last stage of editing this video, and there's no outro because my camera battery died. So I'm gonna film an outro here now, but I also thought I would take this opportunity to answer some common questions I've gotten in the comment section. The number one most common question I got throughout doing these unhaul videos is what is happening to the books? Where are they going? Originally I wanted to offer the books to family and friends first, and then whatever wasn't chosen by them would go to charity shops and be donated. That didn't really happen. I got very overwhelmed very quickly. I don't have like any room in my apartment to store the books anymore. Previously, before I'd unhauled them, they were in my second bedroom, but now someone's living in that second bedroom, so I had nowhere else, and it just got very overwhelming. So I ended up giving some away to friends, but not as many as I would have liked. Most of them did just get donated to charity shops. There was just so many. The labor, the manual labor that went behind the scenes was a lot and not what I anticipated. I didn't take all of them to one charity shop. They've kind of gone around to different ones because again, there was too many. It was ridiculous. You guys have seen, there was over 800 books I unhauled. Over 800 books. There's been a lot of comments about the couch as well and concern about the couch. I'm happy to report she's now fine, completely back to normal, which you could probably tell in this video since there were no books on the couch. She was looking normal, her normal self. And the last thing I have to add is I will be doing a bookshelf tour. I don't know when. I would like to think it would be happening soon, but I think ideally it will be in the next 3 months. Hopefully sooner. Like I'm really hoping for June or May. June's most likely, but I also want to just let you know it might be like a little bit longer. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and another big thank you for those who've watched all the unhauls. I know there's like a few people who've kept up with it all, and yeah, thank you for being so interested. I had so much fun making these videos, even though they took me so long. It was kind of like doing a little diary message to myself, because a huge reason I couldn't get rid of a lot of the books for a really long time was I didn't want to say goodbye to them, and I didn't want to say goodbye to my childhood or the memories that the books had attached to. So that's why when I sat down and filmed these, I tried to share like stories of how I got them or what point in my life I read them and what they meant to me at that point in time, because that's why those books were really important to me and I wanted to hold on to those memories, and I'm able to do that through this video. And yeah, it means a lot when I share something like this and someone else likes it too, so thank you. A little bit cheesy, but you know, you always get cheesy when it's nostalgic, I reckon. If you've made it this far, leave me one of the autumn leaf emojis. It's now autumn here, which is beautiful. So yeah, we'll do that. Otherwise, thanks so much again. I feel like I said thank you 5 million times. So this video is going to end right now. Have a good day. Bye-bye.